Welcome to the Big Bets on Campus podcast. This is the Group of Five Deep Dive. I'm Mike Calabrese, joined by my co-host Duck. 2 weeks in the book for us, Duck, and man, we are rolling up to 8-0 on our best bets. In this program, we celebrate the wins, but when it's time to turn the page, we got to get right back to work, start mining for some more winners, and we're going to do that here in week 2. But before the picks, a quick sounding off segment for Duck and I. Oh, I don't know, where should I turn? Let's see here. Maybe the Boise fan base for putting Duck and Duck, I really pulled you through the mud on this one. They were throwing shade at us on YouTube, on Twitter, on Instagram, anywhere that they could find me, that I was a moron, that what do I know about football? What makes me qualified to be an expert? Well, I'll tell you this. I knew that this was going to be a winning bet at 2 points. One, when I made the bet for starters, because it was just a good bet. It was a good situational spot. I like the fact that I was fading Boise with a brand new offensive coordinator, Ashton Jeanty, not walking through that door to save their offense 5, 6, 10 times a game as he did last year. And the other way that I knew that this was going to be a winner is when the ESPN telecast was in the locker room seeing Golish's pregame speech. It's pretty much boilerplate, trying to get a little rah-rah, and he gets to the end and he goes, we're just going to outlast them when the going gets tough in the fourth quarter, and he put up the four fingers, and I almost rolled my eyes because every coach does it. He goes, you know what we're going to do in the fourth quarter, and then he switched his hand into a choking motion and basically said they were going to squeeze the life out of Boise. And lo and behold, that's exactly what they did in the second half of that game. After a slow start offensively, they were just absolutely rolling downhill. And that's enough for Boise right now because I don't want to throw more dirt on them. The players certainly don't deserve it. And I think there's going to be plenty of spots for us to hop back in. When the market overreacts to week 1, that's when you have to go ahead and start to be a bit of a contrarian. They're an incredibly talented team. They're still one of the top, let's call it 5 or 10 teams in the G5, even with that loss right out of the gate. So, everybody just pump the brakes. But I want to, pound my chest a little bit for dealing with the heat, having to listen to it all week, and then South Florida coming out and backing me up. Duck, what did you think of that game? Then hit us with your sounding off segment.
Yeah, I mean, South Florida left no doubt in the middle quarters. They really took firm control of the game and they really, stepped their foot on the throat of Boise State in the third quarter. And it was just completely a momentum shift and firm control in the trenches from USF. And, I was stunned at the amount of crap you took about that play. And yeah, now we kind of get to see what all that hard work pays off for you and I. I mean, that was one where it was a no doubter after about 5 minutes into the second quarter when it was tied up. And yeah, USF really played a fantastic football game and really a gotta have it spot with their next two opponents that they have coming up. It was really a gotta have it spot for USF. So that was really nice to get to the window on that one.
All right, how about for your sounding off segment? I think the positivity is going to shift into a different direction.
I mean, we looked at it all summer with these guys, and they had some pieces coming back, and Middle Tennessee and Derek Mason just rolls that out there against Austin P, and it was just so pathetic the way that they looked. You were thinking about having a little marginal improvement incrementally along the offensive and defensive trench, was not there. Maybe Nicholas Vattiato improved as a passer, just was not there. You get completely dominated and destroyed by Austin P. 2.6 yards per rush, 0 for 12 on third down. It was just an embarrassing performance. And this team, it's not going to get any better this week against Wisconsin, but they need to find something on the drawing board quickly, or this team is headed for 2-10 or worse this season. So Middle Tennessee was a big disappointment. I was stunned at how ill prepared they were. Really, really bad football played in Murfreesboro on Saturday night.
Before we get into the bets, there's a quick and easy way for you to tail us. First, sign up for Action Pro. You'll get instant notifications whenever any Action Network expert tracks a bet within the app, whether that's me, Duck, Stucky. You want to get those right away so you get the absolute best number because the difference can be winning and losing. Even a half of a point can be all the difference. Plus, you get access to our pro projections powered by Sean Kerner and our predictive analytics team and a ton of other benefits. To celebrate football's return, we have a special offer just for you. Just go to actionnetwork.com/pro and get $20 off the annual price with the promo code BBOC20. So don't miss out on the best bets at the best prices during football season and all throughout the year. Visit actionnetwork.com/pro and use promo code BBOC20 and get $20 off a year of Action Pro. Also, for these specific bets we're about to get into, if you're listening, you can go ahead and go to the episode description for a quick slip link in the podcast. It's also in the video description on YouTube, or visit actionnetwork.com/bet now to tail these bets. All right, as we mentioned, 8-0, it's a great start. We're all really excited around the Action Network offices here, but it's time to get right back into it. You're only as good as your last best bet that you've given out. And with that, it's time to talk best bets for week 2. Duck hitting us with a buy low spot on Cincinnati right out of the gate. They're a 20-point favorite hosting Bowling Green. Listen, I know that it's a team game, Duck, and sometimes it's a fade of an opponent. It's not necessarily your faith in the team that you're betting on. But Brendan Sorsby struggled mightily through the air, to put it lightly, against Nebraska. But he did cook them on the ground with his legs, whether it was design runs or a lot of scrambles. So is this a Sorsby redemption game when they host Bowling Green, or is this just a time to rebuild, or to fade, I should say, a rebuilding Falcons team in year 0 under Eddie George?
Yeah, I mean, I'm fading Bowling Green. I wasn't super impressed with the taste that was in my mouth after they defeated Lafayette at home in week 1. Just 265 yards of total offense for Bowling Green and only 4 yards per play. Drew Pine was unimpressive, 12 out of 18 for 109 yards. Only 2 passes over 20 yards all game against that Lafayette defense. Their longest rush as a team was 14 yards. They had 1 offensive touchdown after returning the opening kickoff of the season back for a touchdown for the 2nd year in a row. And it just was uninspiring football. Cincinnati's defense, I thought, actually performed pretty well against the run last week against Nebraska. Only allowed 1 explosive rush, and on 35 rushing attempts, just allowed 113 yards, 3.2 yards per carry. I thought in the trenches, Cincinnati actually played pretty well. Bowling Green offensively, 4 out of 14 on 3rd down, and they were 1 for 3 on 4th down. So they got stuffed on 4th and 1 twice. Couldn't get the yard against Lafayette. They're not going to be able to get it against Cincinnati here. I thought the Bearcats did well to keep Nebraska in 3rd down all night. When you look at the standard down metrics, 1st and 2nd down, Cincinnati actually pretty well held their own in that contest. Nebraska had 18 3rd down attempts. Well, what's that going to mean for Bowling Green? They're going to struggle offensively. They're going to live in 3rd down. They're not going to convert it. They don't have it in the trenches against Cincinnati. They barely had it against Lafayette. I mean, my goodness, against that overmatched FCS team, you score 1 offensive touchdown at home. You knew what Bowling Green wanted to do with the Eddie George system, ground and pound, run the rock. It just didn't look very good. The last thing I'll say, Bowling Green in the red zone was just terrible. 4 trips, 1 touchdown. They went 3 and out 4 times against Lafayette. It was just uninspiring. I don't think Bowling Green's defense is very good. We'll see that against Sorsby and Cincinnati in this matchup. Cincinnati will get a big win. They'll win by margin. They'll cover the number here.
For the record, I like that one. I think Sorsby, I mean, there's nowhere to go but up in terms of what he does through the air. And the fact that, break glass in the case of emergency, he can just tuck it and run, particularly against lesser defenses with lesser athletes in the box. I think he can absolutely hurt them on the ground. See him going for at least, let's call it 60 or 70 yards rushing again and being a real headache to contain. All right, best bet for me. It's important to get this number because it has the half attached to it in the direction you want it. James Madison plus 14.5 at Louisville. Let's start with the fact that Bob Chesney is not only a winner, we love him here on the pod, but also a guy who does not get blown out. In his last 46 games as a head coach, he's lost by more than 14 points 1 time. And that came against South Dakota State in the FCS playoffs. The Jackrabbits won the FCS Natty that year. That's a long run of being prepared, whether you're playing up, you're playing down, sandwich spots, look aheads. There's no traps with Chesney at the helm. And we all know this. This is James Madison's Super Bowl, because if they either win this game or take the Cardinals 15 rounds, lose a game a la Boise did against Oregon last year, coming down right to the wire in the 4th quarter, that's going to elevate the ceiling and the potential upside of this entire season, really the Sun Belt as a whole, because all of a sudden they become a playoff contender, and every game that they play in Sun Belt play takes on that elevated importance. So the stakes couldn't be higher. This is one of those games that's, it's pinned up in the weight room, in the locker room, in walkthroughs, saving things in week 1 against Weber State just to be able to use in this game. All of it has been building up to this, and I think this roster and this coaching staff is ready for it. I absolutely love what they have in the rush game. because what they can do is not only be multiple in personnel packages in the way that they run the ball with two quarterbacks. I'll get to that in a moment. And also the way that they use tight ends. If they're successful running the football, they're going to be able to shrink this game down, and those 14 and a half points become even more valuable. Louisville on the other side, I don't necessarily see them being able to break this game wide open and pull James Madison out of their comfort zone, at least in the first half. They were fine. Miller Moss was okay against Eastern Kentucky, but two interceptions. They weren't quite as dynamic, I think, as they were hoping for out of the gate. The running game is still going to be a problem, but James Madison's defense, I think, is going to be able to hold its own, at least for the first half. And that's really when it's going to come down to their offense. Can they do what they did last week? Because they ran for 313 yards, 7.1 yards per carry against Weber State. And as I mentioned, the two quarterbacks, Barnett the third is QB1. They also folded in Sluka for, multiple packages inside the red zone, being able to use him as almost a de facto wildcat quarterback. So when they put him on the field, adding in everything else they do with their pre-snap motions, with their reads, keying on different defenders, using reverses, using team speed, the opponents that they're facing against them. I really think they are going to be able to move the football. It's not going to be 313 yards, but I think they're going to be able to get close to 175, 200. And if that is the case, I think that this is going to be a game in the fourth quarter. Defensively, Colin Hitchler looks like the right hire right from the start. I mean, he came from the Luke Fickell coaching tree, spent a year at Alabama as a co-DC, and you saw the discipline and the havoc right away against Weber State. 5 tackles for loss, 3 INTs, 6 pass breakups. They even blocked a punt on special teams as well. So I think this team is really well coached. I think the roster is one of the best in the G5. And if I want to pick a spot for a G5 team to win outright or certainly to hang around for 4 quarters, this is it. So I'm going to go ahead and stick with this one. JMU is essentially a spot we talked about in the preseason. No reason to get off the ride now. Everything I saw, Barnett the third showing no ill effects of that injury that he was coming off of. That was really the hesitation for me. It seems like this dual quarterback system may work. All right, Doc, for your second best bet, this one's a big old dumpster fire, if I'm being honest with you. I know you're laying the points with the Golden Hurricane, who are on the road at New Mexico State, and both teams did win in week one. But Tulsa's offense, I mean, we'll see if they can continue to be balanced and functional as they were against Abilene Christian. And the Aggies defense played great against Bryant, but the offense barely generated 300 total yards of offense. So you like Tulsa laying the 3.5. It's a team that I absolutely took the hammer to, betting them under in multiple ways in the preseason. What did you see against Abilene Christian that gives you the faith that not only they can win this game, but pretty comfortably so they don't get backdoored at the end?
Well, I mean, overall, I saw a Tulsa team that racked up 500 yards of total offense, and they were very efficient. They ran 80 plays, 6.5 yards a play. I thought Kirk Francis was efficient there against Abilene Christian, but it was really their defense that I thought was really inspiring here against the Wildcats. 3 yards per carry allowed, only one explosive play surrendered on the ground. One of three red zone opportunities resulted in a touchdown, so they really were able to bow up. They secured 5 sacks. I think Tulsa, similar to what we saw with Central Michigan, they're taking on the mold of a new coach. They have a new attitude, a new intensity, and they're really having this shot of adrenaline into the program that has really, really been needed. Now, when you look at New Mexico State, they really struggled against a bottom 100 FCS team in Bryant. Only 78 rushing yards, 2.4 yards per attempt. Fife was just kind of going through the motions, 14 for 31. Half of their passing yards came on 3 plays. The Aggies were 4 out of 15 on third down, and they had 6 3-and-outs against Bryant. It was just a very jerky and choppy offensive performance. Half of their first downs, they were bailed out and they received those first downs via penalty. So it's not like they were achieving offensive success. I walked away from that one very, very unimpressed with New Mexico State. I think Tulsa has more talent. I think the trajectory of what I saw from them last week carries over. They're benefiting from this new energetic coaching staff. I know you don't like Tulsa very much, but in this spot here, this is absolutely a spot for Tulsa to just lay the hammer on New Mexico State. I think we'll find a spot in coming up soon to fade Tulsa, but it's not this week. They will beat New Mexico State, and there's a chance they may beat them handily.
I'm gonna have the Doppler out. I'm gonna be following the Golden Hurricane in this game. I'm gonna tail you because why not? We've hit every single best bet. But also, I want them to win and win comfortably because we even talked about this exact outcome in the preseason, which is beat the hell out of the FCS team you play, and then you're drawn in New Mexico State offense that we were down on Logan Fife before he even threw a pass for them this season. If they beat them by, let's call it 17 points, it's a laugher. I think that's just going to set up some really great numbers for us to, to go ahead and fade Tulsa in the month of September. So I like where your head's at there. I'm going to close this out. Navy UAB going over 59 and a half for the total. Trent, baby, we're going to have some fun this year. I don't know how long it's going to last. You may get fired by the time the calendar flips to October, but for the few games that you have left, I'm going to have some fun and try to make some money on, your back essentially because UAB to me in all the dirt and mud I've slung at Trent over the years, this is a perfect half team for overs. Dilfer and his OC Alex Mortensen, aka Mort, they can scheme things up and take advantage of positional mismatches with their weapons all over the field, particularly with this running back room, which if anything, watching that first game against an FCS opponent where they go north of 50, this could be a pretty special running back room by G5 standards. Javon Jackson and Solomon Beebe are really explosive runners. And then Jalen Kitna, unlike his predecessor, aka the check down merchant, Jacob Zeno, he likes to push the ball downfield, and it's really going to open up this offense and create even more explosive plays. So this offense, in general, I trust them to move the ball against a Navy defense that was replacing just about half of its defensive production. And that opener, I totally throw that out. I do not give a rip. The facts of the matter is their offense played really well. I expected them to. The defense played really well. They played VMI. That means nothing. The Keydets nearly went winless in 2024. So I'm throwing that out. They stink. And I think what's happening is the odds makers are throwing out both FCS games from week one and saying, all right, let's just look at these two teams last year. How different could they be? Well, Navy won 41 to 18, total of 59 points. So they basically just stuck it at the exact same number. Here's the thing, though. With Zeno last year, this was his last game as their QB1, as the starter for this Blazer team. After that, with Kitna starting, UAB games just exploded in terms of their scoring. They averaged over 65 points a game total in terms of, what they were giving up and what they were scoring down the stretch with Kitna as their starter. So Dilfer, when you all put it together, it's no shock that 64% of the games he's coached for UAB have cashed the over, which is the eighth best clip in the sport since 2023 when he took over in Birmingham. So the battle, again, I think it's going to be the pushback, at least from sharps out there as well. They saw the triple option 2 times last year. They went ahead and hired the Air Force defensive coordinator. Well, let's break this down. How'd that go against those triple option offenses last season? They gave up 41 to Navy and they gave up 44 to Army. So experience is valuable, but if you got your doors blown off, if you weren't even getting a finger on the ball carrier until you was 6, 7 yards downfield, how much did you really learn? And the DC, Steve Russ, I talked about this at length in the preseason. He's an adult. He's supposed to be helping mature this defense, get back to some of the fundamentals. How did they look in that opener? They couldn't tackle, and they were just leaving people wide open against an FCS team. So that is not something that impresses me. And oh, by the way, if you want to point to, he was the DC at Air Force between, I believe, 2014 and 2017. He's always facing triple option offenses. The last time he faced this Navy team, they dropped 48 points on his head and 471 rushing yards. So, let's take that with a grain of salt. The guy is absolutely an upgrade over the high school coach they had as the DC previously, but he's no option, savant. He's not a magician. He's not going to come in and all of a sudden Navy's going to struggle, particularly when you look at what Drew Cronick can cook up with Blake Horvath at quarterback and Eli Heidenreich being used as a chess, or, kind of a queen piece on the chessboard all over the field. All this, I think Navy's clinical. I think they're explosive with Cronick calling the plays. They'll take advantage. Give me the over. My number calls for this to be 65. All right, Duck, last week I did the 4-minute offense. This week you are on the clock. You're going to walk us through Miami of Ohio and Rutgers because we don't have an official play on it, but maybe you can talk me into a lean one way or another.
Yeah, I mean, I looked at Miami of Ohio last week against Wisconsin, about as bad as you could be offensively. 7 total first downs, 0 for 9 third down conversions. The Redhawks had 10 total possessions. They punted 8 times and they had 2 interceptions at the end. It was just really, really rough. The PFF grades were off the charts bad with pass blocking, with their run blocking, their overall offensive PFF, just very, very poor for Miami of Ohio. They had no answers offensively, and although they have a major dude at quarterback in Daquan Finn, we just saw the inexperience at every single position for the Red Hawks. They just could not compete with that level of athlete. We see Rutgers now. They were completely on cruise control in the late stages of the first half against Ohio. They were up 31 to 14 right before half. They had Ohio backed up 3rd and 9 in their own end zone, couldn't get off the field. The Bobs go all the way down, kick a field goal. They receive the second half kickoff. They run it right down their throat and score a touchdown. Then they get a 3-and-out and tie up the game. And it went haywire. You had Parker Navarro, who was playing completely possessed. He looked like the quarterback that belonged in the Big Ten that day. It was just incredible, the performance. One of the best performances I've ever seen him make in an Ohio uniform was against Rutgers. It was really quite stunning, in my opinion, to see Rutgers defense so out of position in pass coverage, undisciplined with their defensive lanes. They could not control Parker Navarro making plays on the ground. I would not want to be in that film room if I was reviewing the tapes with, imagine what Greg Schiano is harping on them all week about that defensive performance. It was so atypical of a typical Schiano defense. But I think that the errors that we saw with Rutgers are fixable. I have to assume this week the complete focus for Rutgers is going to be challenging the defense in practice, fixing the mistakes that were observed when they were watching the film. I look at Miami of Ohio. Generally, Chuck Martin will fold his tent early in this second Big Ten game. Chuck Martin's not trying to win a national championship. He's trying to win a MAC championship. And so at the first sign of the team fatiguing or somebody getting hurt, they generally will pack it in here early. So what I think we see is I think we see Rutgers completely focused on their defensive output and shutting down Miami of Ohio just this exact same way that Wisconsin did. I think the offense will perform at a level like we saw before. I was very impressed with Rutgers and what they were able to bring to the table in the pass game. I mean, you look at Callie McManus now has some weapons to throw the ball to with Partridge and DT Sheffield. It was very advanced by Rutgers standards. So I think we'll see that. But I can't imagine this score really getting out of hand, and I can't imagine Miami of Ohio doing a lot of scoring. And so a play that could be made in this game is Miami of Ohio's team total under 16.5. I think we'll just see a tremendous amount of slower pace. There shouldn't be hardly any tempo by either one of these teams. Miami will struggle again to run the ball. They'll struggle to convert third downs. I mean, they ran 5 plays last week in enemy territory. It was just so bad. So I can't see that getting corrected overnight, especially with who they line up against. Now, Rutgers with Schiano being defensive focused, he's got a real motivation for his defense to go out there and lay the wood defensively. So if you're going to make a play on this game, I like Miami of Ohio's team total under.
Football is back, and Underdog is the best place to make picks and win money all season long. Playing on Underdog is easy. Just pick whether your favorite player will go higher or lower on stats like touchdowns, receiving yards, interceptions, and more. You can play with as little as $1, get your picks right, and you can win up to 5,000 times your cash. This week, I am on Underdog, and I'm looking at Baylor SMU. Going to ride the hot hand and go with Sawyer Robertson to go higher than his 278.5 passing yards on the board, and Cole Wilson to go higher than his receiving yards that are listed at 50.5. And that's the beauty of Underdog. It's easy to ride the hot offense or player. Punch it in, you got action. Download the app today and sign up with promo code BBOC to score $50 in bonus funds when you play your first $5. That's promo code BBOC. Millions of fans have already won billions making picks on Underdog. Will you be the next? Must be 18 plus, 19 plus in Alabama and Nebraska, 19 plus in Colorado for some games, 21 plus in Arizona, Massachusetts, and Virginia, and present in a state where Underdog Fantasy operates. Terms apply. See assets.underdogfantasy.com/web/play and get terms _DFS_.html for details. Offer not valid in Maryland, Michigan, Ohio, and Pennsylvania. Concerned with your play? Call 1-800-GAMBLER or visit www.ncpgambling.org. In New York, call the 24/7 Hope line and 1-877-8-HOPE-NY or text HOPE-NY. That's 467-369. We turn now to our G5 Moneyline Parlay. It's a two-legger here. I'm going to start with Fresno plus 115 against Oregon State. We finally saw the Matt Entz offense. We saw what we wanted from the run game. They played bully ball, 351 yards on the ground, 8 yards per carry, 5 rushing scores. They just beat the hell out of Georgia Southern. They won 42-14 despite going -2 in the turnover margin. Meanwhile, Oregon State has some serious issues in their trench. They couldn't rush the passer, 0 sacks against a true freshman quarterback from Cal. So you have to assume that not only were they hoping for their front four to get home, but they were going to probably dial up some exotic blitzes, something to rattle a young passer. They couldn't lay a finger on him. 0 sacks in that game. They also couldn't block it up when they had the ball, particularly in the run game. 2.4 yards per carry with a back like Hankerson. That's a scary low number for a line that just replaced 4 starters. It could be a long season for the Beavs. And also, speaking of the Beavs, their quarterback that they brought in, they spent the money. They're trying to stay relevant. They're in this like weird limbo, G6, whatever you want to call the Pac-2 right now. They go out and get Malik Murphy. He just doesn't do it for me. And Fresno just put Georgia Southern in a box for 4 quarters. That should be, kind of a difficult ask for a team with Georgia Southern's skill talent with a quarterback like J.C. French. To completely shut them down like they did, I think says a lot about how much this Fresno team grew up from week 0 to week 1. And the big part of it is that Malik Murphy is not a scrambler. When you go ahead and turn on that tape against Kansas, where Fresno really struggled, that 31-7 loss in their opener, he was giving them fits. Daniels, every time he tucked it or when he extended plays with his legs, he was running horizontally down the line of scrimmage and then finding somebody wide open. That's not Malik Murphy's game. He's a big kid. He can run a little bit, but he is not that quick twitch athlete that is constantly an issue where you have to spy him on every play. It takes one of your defenders out of your game plan because you're locking him in on the quarterback. They don't have that worry here. So without him doing that, I like Fresno to continue their growth under Entz. As I mentioned, it's a very short underdog for me this week, but plus 115 I think is the way to go with Fresno. Duck, what are we pairing it up with?
Well, first of all, I love the play, and that was a play I strongly considered. And we finally saw the Fresno State output offensively that we were hoping for in week 0. They were very physical at the point of attack. They were able to actually throw the ball around a little bit as well with Warner, but the tight ends looked good. The running game looked really good. Finally, the breakthrough that we thought, and I think that that continues. So excellent play there with Fresno State. We had to kind of search far and wide in the G5 ranks to try to find an appetizing underdog here for the parlay. I'm going San Diego State against Wazoo. I thought Wazoo was a complete mess offensively against a depleted Idaho team. We just saw Idaho's stud receiver star for TCU. Their coaching staff is at New Mexico. Look what they did in the Big House. I mean, Idaho was really up against it, and Washington State could absolutely get nothing going. They are a complete mess. We thought it was going to be Zeviakis who was going to start at quarterback. Well, he didn't even play. Jackson Potter got the start, and he did okay to complete some passes, but there was no explosivity in the passing game with this group. This bunch had 1 explosive pass during the entire game. Count them up on your fingers, Mike. The Cougs had 3 rushing yards. 22 attempts, 3 rushing yards. You talk about the Jimmy Rogers system and South Dakota State's physical style of play with running the ball, using multiple tight ends in the run blocking system, enforcing your will in the trenches. Absolutely did not happen here. They could not impose their will against Idaho, and they're not going to be able to do it against San Diego State. 3 for 12 on third down. They were dominated in the time of possession. Wazoo was really bad in the red zone. They were bad on third down. It was just such an uninspiring, pathetic home performance against a team that's considered their rival. So you look at San Diego State. I thought they were very sharp offensively. Quarterback play was much improved over 2024 with Jaden Denegal. Lucky Sutton had some pop in the run game. They had a couple packages for Bird Emanuel to get involved. We saw some really nice downfield passing. I said this all summer, but last year nobody had worse quarterback play in the Mountain West than San Diego State, and it really handicapped their offense in the Sean Lewis system, but we kind of saw sparks of it against Stony Brook, where we're in year two of the system. Guys are a little bit more comfortable. They had a vision of what they wanted to be on the field. And I think Donegal really unlocks a lot of what San Diego State wants to do. Aside from that, I was really encouraged by the Aztecs defensively, and this should be another opportunity for them to put the clamps down on a Washington State team that's really searching for their offensive identity here. So 1.8 yards per rush surrendered last week for San Diego State, 95 total yards allowed against the Seawolves, zero explosive plays surrendered. The Aztecs are going to go up to the Palouse and they're going to win this football game. So take San Diego State. It's not really a spread there. It's 1.5, but take the Aztecs on the money line.
Yeah, this fade of the Pac-2 will pay out plus 340 when it cashes. I am fingers crossed here, hopefully to get our first Moneyline underdog parlay across the finish line here for the season. Check out the Parlay Express account in the free award-winning Action Network app, where we'll be posting this G5 Moneyline Parlay. You'll find a bunch of other fun long shot bets and parlays there as well. You can also find the quick slip link in the podcast and video description, or visit actionnetwork.com/bet now to find and tail some of the bets we've discussed today. All right, we're going to close out our official plays here before we get to our tug of war with a 2-minute drill. Duck, your 2-minute drill's up first. Remember, always use the sideline, spike it if you have to. You got one timeout in your back pocket, but run us through 3 games real quick.
Yeah, we'll go based on projections because these are FCS games. There's no lines out at this time. Lehigh against Sacred Heart in FCS action. Lehigh defensively really put the clamps down against Richmond, holding the Spiders to just 181 total yards. Richmond was 4 of 13 on third down, 2.2 yards per carry on the ground. Both of these teams operate very, very slowly, each of them almost always 10 seconds or less on the play clock before the snap. Sacred Heart could not move the ball against Stonehill. They should get hammered badly here. Lehigh is 2-1 run heavy. There's very little explosivity on the offense, but their defense will really put the clamps on Sacred Heart. They will grind this game down with Yoder, their running back. This is going to be 26-10, 23-7 type of game. The second half should move very, very quickly here. Anything 44.5 or higher, I'm going to look under here. We talked Boise State at the beginning of the program. The first number you see, lay it with the Broncos this week. They are playing an Eastern Washington team that is a shell of their former selves, and I think they are going to bounce back very nicely at home here on the blue turf. Eastern Washington is very, very poor defensively, and the offense is nothing close to what we've come to know with Eastern Washington Eagle offenses over the years. 481 yards given up last week by Eastern Washington to Incarnate Word. Remember that Incarnate Word team we talked about in week 0 against Nichols? They shredded Eastern Washington through the air. Not going to go well here on the blue turf. Boise should kind of get it figured out. I think they'll rebound nicely here. We should get about 10 points of line value. Anything 31 or so, I'm going to lay it with the Broncos. The last one here, I was actually really impressed with Illinois State in their performance against Oklahoma. It was 21-3 entering the fourth quarter. That Redbirds defense was really giving OU and John Mateer fits. They were held, OU was scoreless on their first 2 possessions of each half. And the Redbirds did a great job of forcing multiple turnovers and turnover on downs in this game. Oklahoma went 3 and out 4 times. So just it was not the traditional Oklahoma performance against an FCS. Now, we're talking about Morehead State, who they're playing, who is in the non-scholarship FCS Pioneer Football League. They were shredded. Their secondary is in a really bad way. 26 out of 38 given up for 309 passing yards and 416 overall yards surrendered against a non-Division I opponent last week for Morehead State. Anything up to 27.5, lay the hammer with Illinois State and do not think twice.
All right, time for my 2-minute drill. Going to start with Ohio, West Virginia over 16.5. Rich Rod turned the clock back to the mid-aughts. The spread offense was absolutely slicing and dicing Robert Morris, even with some bad turnovers. They could go for 393 on the ground, 5 TDs. Their passing game was super efficient. No reason to believe that anything is going to change against an Ohio front that is simply dudeless. There are no difference makers in that front 7 to be able to blow up, this running game before it gets to full speed at the second level. And I'm going to see more of those explosive runs. Rutgers against this same Ohio defense, they averaged over 6 yards per carry, and the Greek Rifle had plenty of time to work. He finished 18 for 23 for 2 TDs. West Virginia will score plenty in this game, which means, it's 2 to tango on a total. I'm going over because Ohio can move it with Parker Navarro. I won't belabor the point. You already brought it up. He looked like a borderline All-American in that game. 322 total yards, 4 touchdowns, a virtually perfect performance. So I'm going to go ahead and see them get to at least 4 touchdowns in this game against a West Virginia defense that I still have some questions about. Robert Morris was not the test that I take seriously. And then finally, with the total pace, pace, pace. West Virginia was under 22 seconds per snap, which is top 10 pace in the entire country. Ohio is more methodical, but I anticipate they're going to be playing from behind. We're going to balance this out with an under 52.5 between San Jose State and Texas. Listen, the whole story is arch, arch, arch. Well, what got buried is the defense is still great. Jeremiah Smith's yard per route run in 2024 was an otherworldly 3.15. Against Texas, that was down to 2.15. He was blanketed. He was bothered. He was dropping the football. He wasn't explosive. They're going to go ahead and own the skies against the Spartans on Saturday. The team total for SJSU is 7.5. I go under there as well. This is going to be a defensive masterclass as they look for revenge. And Sark, over time, his MO has just not necessarily been to truly embarrass teams in these paycheck games. In 2023, 37-10 over Rice. That same year, 31-10 over Wyoming, 52-0 over Colorado State. In recent years, last year, 56-7 over UTSA, 51-3 over UL Monroe. I think this is an opportunity for Arch to feel good. He's going to get, obviously an opportunity to play 3 quarters. But last year, the difference is when they were scoring a bit more in these paycheck games, he wanted to give a real run to Arch and run the full offense. I think he's going to go back down to a vanilla offense, paring down, what they're running in the second half and making it a bit more vanilla to be able to hide what they have coming around the corner in terms of their offensive playbook. And finally, Liberty laying 6.5 against Jacksonville State. I think it's key to get in under the full touchdown in this spot because Vasco is the quarterback that I thought he would be running this Flames offense. He was an efficient passer, 3 TDs, no picks in the opener against Maine. He was their leading rusher as well. He's a difference maker in the run game that Caden Salter was not last year when they looked listless at times and they couldn't convert on 3rd and 4th and shorts. I think they can now. If you look at their defense in that game against Maine, other than a 77-yard rushing touchdown, they basically played shutout football the rest of the way, holding the Black Bears to 239 yards other than that one play. So I think this defense is here. Jacksonville State, meanwhile, they got lucky. They got to play against Cam Fancher, at least for a little while, before he gets knocked out of that game. And, they go to Taven Jackson. Essentially was given to them on a silver platter to say, yeah, your defense doesn't need to be that good because this guy has just been horrific. I have no idea how he won the starting job in Orlando, but that was a gift to Jacksonville State. And I think it's hiding the fact that their defense has holes that can be exploited by this Liberty team. Jamie Chadwell knows how to game plan. And essentially on defense, all they got to do is stop Cam Cook because if he is shut down, they are toast. Wimsat is not good at playing from behind. He is somebody who, as soon as you pressure him, he starts to put the ball in harm's way. I think this is actually going to be a big win for Liberty and give them a feel that they're finally truly over the nightmare season that was 2024. So 6.5 is a great number here. I'd play it up to 9.5 against Jacksonville State. That is a far cry from what they were last fall. All right, those were our 2-minute drives. Real quick, getting you some more action there on the card. We're going to finish this out with our new seasonal segments. The Tug of War. So it started the year, the ball was at midfield. You got to pick correct. It moves 10 yards closer to your opponent's end zone. This, by the way, is just a statement, a warning, whatever you want to call it. Get the best number because there were so many numbers attached to Toledo out there in the market, and I got the worst one. I got 7.5. So Duck went ahead and hooked me there in the first game. I think it closed at 10. Doesn't matter in the Tug of War. This is big boy. This is the big time. You got to go ahead and take your lumps. It doesn't matter if a better number was floating out there. So we are back this time for the Battle of H-Town, the H-Town Hoonanny. It's between Rice and Houston. And Duck, you can go ahead and tell our audience who you have first in a game where Rice is catching 12.5.
Well, we saw this last week where Rice was significantly outmatched on paper last week against Louisiana Lafayette. They really battled hard. They dominated the time of possession. They were really able to truncate the game down, just like Scott Abel wanted to do with that Rice rushing offense. The game played to 10 total possessions. This was a complete slow bleed here for Rice. 53 attempts, 209 yards. There was no explosivity, but it was consistent performance on the ground, 4 yards at a time. The pass game was efficient for the limited action that they asked Chase Jenkins to do. He was smart with the football. Defensively, Rice really did well, I thought, in pass coverage. Walker Howard was 10 of 28 for 88 yards, or both quarterbacks combined, 10 of 28 for 88 yards. Only one Louisiana player caught more than one pass. We heard all summer about how improved this ULL pass attack was going to be, and it may end up still playing out that way, but it just didn't happen here. They really had it schemed up defensively to just create nightmares for Louisiana. I see Rice doing the exact same thing here. They're going to truncate this game down. They're going to control the clock. They'll dominate the time of possession. We'll see them play keep away. And you're just going to see Rice crushing your soul 3.9 yards at a time. We'll see an efficient run game with a unique scheme that Houston, yeah, Willie Fritz might have a little bit of maybe a little better success here with how to defend it because he runs a quirky rush offensive scheme himself, but it's still so unique to this level of football. It hasn't been replicated. We saw it at Davidson over the last several seasons. I think Rice is going to go in there and throw their best punch against Big Brother. It's at home. Absolutely give me those 12 and a half points. 17 to 7, 17-10 type game.
I'm looking it up right now. I believe it's the Battle of the Bayou. Is that right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So give me the better team with, I mean, listen, Scott Abel's a guy I like. I can't wait to finally be on his side. There's going to be 2 straight weeks fading this guy after, essentially introducing him to a lot of our audience in the offseason. I'm going to get there. We got plenty of American football to be played in the month of October where anytime they're catching points, I want to play them. But in this one, they're just going to be outclassed in the trenches. And 1 week into the Austin Armstrong experience, calling plays for this Houston defense, he's the highest rated defense per PFF in the entire country. Complete and utter domination of Stephen F. Austin. Connor Wigman comes in, shakes off the rust, 3 TDs, 0 turnovers. The offense as a whole was functional. They could run, they could throw. Yes, Rice won that opener. I went back, I watched the sped up version of it, but they gained 251 total yards. As you mentioned, zero explosiveness. Their starter had a QBR of 4.6 out of 100, for Christ's sake. Just get them in a situation where they're down by a touchdown, 10 points, and they can't just go 3.9 yards at a time. And I think you're going to see some mistakes finally creep in to a young team with a young quarterback. And by the way, Walker Howard had like a non-contact injury late in that game. I don't know if it's an oblique or a hip. I have a feeling, and maybe it's just because I'm a Walker Howard truther, I think he would have led them down to at least kick a potential game-winning field goal. But as soon as he went down, the backup came in and it was a mess. He didn't complete a pass. So just something to keep an eye on with Louisiana. I think they're very much drawing dead if Walker Howard is out. The coaching staff, Desermo, has been really cagey with the media thus far. Hopefully it's not an oblique injury because that's one of those baseball injuries. He was a pitcher as well that could potentially just knock him out for 6 weeks kind of thing. So keep an eye on that. But in this one, I'm going to keep it simple. I'm going to take the better team. I was already high on Houston. They put the proof of concept of the new coaching staff, a lot of new pieces through the transfer portal on film in week 1. I liked what I saw. I'll go ahead and lay anything below a touchdown or below 2 touchdowns in this one with the Cougs. That'll do it for today's episode of the Group of 5 Deep Dive under the Big Bets on Campus banner. Thanks for tuning in. As always, don't forget to download the free award-winning Action Network app and leave us a 5-star rating and review wherever you listen to the podcast. As I mentioned, I was going to pick out one of my favorite reviews, so I think it's time to do that. And if you were listening and this is your review, you're going to want to go ahead and hit me up over at Twitter at East Breeze. Man of my word, I'm going to give you $10 to place on any future that you would like. This review comes from John_Mitch4, the biggest upgrade ever on the Group of 5 pod, and a shout out for his title. He's talking about you, Duck. Duck, you've come in, done a phenomenal job, not just giving out winners, but being so thorough, being prepared. We appreciate that. I appreciate that. Thank you so much for being a part of the team here. If you'd like to tail some of the bets that we talked about in today's episode, look for a quick slip link in the episode description. You can also go to actionnetwork.com/bet now. If you haven't already, please subscribe to our YouTube channel. Search for BBOC and you'll have access to all of our preseason content if you still want to be able to get a feel for some of these teams. If that week 1 or week 0 game that maybe played an FCS opponent, you want to know a little bit more under the hood. It was an exhaustive, job for all of us here, Stuckey, Colin, Duck, and myself. So please continue to use that as a resource. But really, on a weekly basis, you can see our show. You can see Colin and Stuck's. There's so many recap shows as well. There's an opportunity to stay in the BBOC universe every day of the week. Thanks for listening to the Big Bets on Campus podcast. And as always, best of luck with all your bets.